Oh no, brown cow. Oh no, brown cow. Oh, we're live. Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Azora Hype here, or you can call me the man in flannel today. I'm trying to be clever per usual. I'm here today with an absolutely fantastic guest, someone that I've been wanting to get on the channel for quite some time. Been discussing it for a couple weeks now, and I'm really excited to have Chris Hax Dogma today on the channel to chat some Westworld. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me on. Glad that we could finally do this live. We've had a couple chats now that are just great chats. I've enjoyed, getting to know you, man, and I'm ready to do this.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying, hey, do more live streams. And I'm saying, all right, I'll try. And I guess we're kind of in an unprecedented world, you could say, right now with what's going on in the world. And we're going to kind of discuss what's going on in Westworld today. We got some awesome people in the chat. We got a couple of donations here from Morally. She has a question. We'll probably get to that in just a moment. But for those of you that don't know Hax Dogma, you have to go check out his Westworld channel, especially the last, I think it's your second last video or the last video you did, the simulation within the simulation, something that we're going to talk about today here on the channel. So lots of stuff for you Westworld fans. Welcome everyone today that's watching. Yeah, let's get into it. So Westworld season 3, really interesting stuff going on. The past couple of seasons presented us each with a different question and answer. The first season kind of showed us how humans were acting within the parks, and then we kind of got, more real stakes within the second season and with that. And now we're in the third season, which is kind of unprecedented because we've got kind of a, I don't want to say a reboot, but maybe a soft reboot into the new world, maybe. With what's going on. So I guess the question I want to ask you first, Hax, is what is kind of your perspective on how we're viewing the third season? Because we got a really big question answered in the last episode, in that Warworld was a simulation. That was really interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love the direction so far. Season 1, they announced this idea of a 5-season story. This idea of them moving backwards slowly, starting with the park and the immersion of that and what it could be like to be a host or, someone visiting the park, and then panning out to, the ignition of maybe the singularity in which robots become conscious and advance past humans, and then, want their independence and start this host revolution, and then pan out a little bit more to see, the tendrils of that revolution slowly start to sink into the people that aren't billionaires and the people that don't exclusively get to visit this park. I like the direction so far, and it definitely seems like this season definitely seems like it's not done in the exact fashion. I don't know if that's because it's lacking like the Western vibes that maybe subtly we expect because it is Westworld, right? Everything is future, everything is present, everything is flying cars and simulations now. It's not going to the Mariposa anymore. I like it. Yeah.
The lines of the maze have kind of been blurred. We kind of had these direct opposites in what we would consider for hosts and humans, as we are looking from the perspectives of, okay, well, this person is conscious, this person isn't. And then we learned to question that. And now we're in this other point where we're like, well, we got someone like Dolores who's going to interact with Caleb, and that's going to be certainly interesting because there was definitely, just in that last scene we saw in the first episode, Hax, we saw the parallel between William and Dolores, kind of giving us a hint at maybe there's some empathy that Dolores might start to have in realizing that Caleb is not part of the whole system that she wants to bring down.
Yeah, I think, even before the season started, we talked about how Dolores was very much not the person that people were rooting for at the end of season 2. I think the general consensus was that, they built this idea of the oppressor being the humans, oppressing hosts. And then they made it to where hosts were then indiscriminately executing people by hanging them from trees. And so it's like, oh, wait, we want hosts to be free, but then we're on the super gray area where it's like, because it doesn't matter, because you can't tell the difference, we're also now rooting for the bad guy of the story. And, so I think that Caleb presents this conduit for them to show the other side of humanity to Dolores. And God willing, he does that. Yeah.
Well, one really interesting thing too is when we're looking at these new sceneries, this imagery we're seeing in season 3, we see how clean and crisp and everything is, and kind of something that popped in my head is, we're seeing the situation of Caleb from his perspective, like this kind of living paycheck to paycheck, this very, very different values from the 1% we saw from, like from the Delos executive, which Dolores kills in the first episode. But I'm, Rehoboam, something is going on there. Something really big is going on there, because perhaps even the simulation could apply to the real world, where there might be more garbage and violence and all these things behind the scenes, and maybe altering reality to make it seem better than it actually is. And that could be maybe something that we see later on in the season, because we see Caleb link up with, the Marshawn Lynch character and some of these other characters, and when we see them resorting to these extreme measures to just try to survive, right? So there's this kind of extreme inequality gap we still see going on within the world of Westworld, and maybe that's kind of a mirage. Some of the nicer things that we see in some of these nicer districts maybe aren't as they appear.
Yeah, and I love this RICO app so much. I love the idea that just you could, if that's what you wanted to do, you could just, sign up for organized crime and just not trust it immediately, that trust that it's not the government just setting you up on Craigslist to, hitman somebody. Like, I don't know. There's just like something really capitalistic about it that I like, but at the same time, then you see how it's immediately abused in the sense that they can get 5 people to then dispose of Dolores, as a person, right? But I don't know. It's like the wild, wild west of the future, because like that blockchain technology and stuff with the RICO app and like that exists, or is very close to existing in a form that is not trackable.
Well, they say the government usually has 15 to 20 years stuff that they're working on in advance to what we don't know in the public, like things behind the scenes, like supercomputers and things of that nature, which I don't know if I necessarily would like to know about, because I already have enough existential crises. But and I'm kind of at the midway point of that now, and I think a lot of people are. But that's certainly an interesting question that we need to ask, right? Like these things that. And that's how the web is tangled within Westworld too. Like that RICO app and the location that Martin Connells is talking about on the underpass, like those things are probably connected. Did Dolores calculate that? Like that is something that's absolutely crazy.
It's got to be, man. I think about it all the time. It's got to be like. So there's 2 things that have just like, it feels like they're playing that red herring, hint at the question, don't answer it, like thing that they've done forever. And that's the time that we see that scene where they just so happen to also be at an underpass. And then in the last episode, when Bernard's like, hey, I need to do a complete scan of my system with a uncorrupted tablet. And then we're like, wait, the fuck is I'm sorry. What is a corrupted tablet? We've never heard
it's
that
okay.
before.
You can drop them if you want.
Okay, cool. And so it's like, wait, there's only 8 episodes this season. There's no way that they're gonna like have this. And of course, Stubbs interrupts him before he finishes. I think it's undoubtable to say that he is definitely corrupted at this point, because why would they show us that? Knowing the limited time that they have.
And one thing that we also have to consider, Chris, is at the end of last season, Dolores was the one that remade his body from her mental image, right? Yeah. So that is something that's absolutely crazy. So like, and that's why Bernard's anxiousness, we're sensing that, like he's remembering that. So that's something that we also have to consider.
Yeah. And I also like this idea that like Bernard is showing like a PTSD, and it may like, we may be, accusing Dolores of something that she didn't do, because the genuine Bernard would act like that because of his, involvement with Ford. Like Ford made him kidnap Elsie. He made him kill Teresa. Both people that he genuinely, as a host, had great interactions and relationships with, so he must constantly, even if he was unaltered by Dolores, must constantly, fear that someone is pulling the strings and making him do things that he doesn't know about. Like, and I think
it's really interesting too, because the the In the Weeks Ahead trailer showed a lot of mirroring, and then the synopsis for the episode 3, The Absence of Field, talks about if you don't like what you see in the mirror, don't blame the mirror. So we see a lot of these mirrorings going on. You just spoke about how Bernard has PTSD. We see that reflected within the character of Caleb, and they're kind of in similar situations where they're trying to work their way through these difficult situations where they don't necessarily know if they might survive the outcome. And then we have someone like Dolores who's in this position of power and taking on these other people in this position of power. So there's this real kind of discrepancy between these, and that's what I really like of kind of where they're going with this, especially with Bernard and Caleb, this PTSD, showing that hosts can feel that too. That's really interesting.
It's like, this whole emotional side, right? Because one of the big parts that I think at some point this show is going to talk about, or we as a species are going to talk about, is that difference between host and human. And the emotional side of humans is a complex mystery that we still don't get, right? And I think that accurately assessing what a human isn't just their intellect and what they can remember and regurgitate on command, and it's that complex twisting nether of emotion, that really defines who we are and how we act. So I think that
especially ego.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah. And so I think, like, I don't know. I just feel like that showing the emotional side of hosts is probably going to be a really good step into making us believe that they can act outside of their prime directive.
We got a really interesting comment in chat. We'll do some shadows in chat in just a second. Talita A says, could Caleb also be a reflection of William? Outwardly, Caleb does crime and is looked at as bad, but his core is really good, where William is outwardly good, but his core is bad. Yeah, there's definitely some similarities there. I noted how the scene where Dolores is in Caleb's arms at the end of episode 1 is almost a direct carbon copy of when William and younger, what's the younger dude, Delis's name? Logan Delos were at the campfire, and then we obviously see Logan egging on William, and later on we see that William falls in love with Dolores, and that kind of becomes shattered. So I think we could see maybe the inverse of that because of where Dolores, her current trajectory is headed in this story. Before we get into some more discussion, I do want to do some shout outs. Maura Lee gave us 2 donations, $24.99. Thank you very much with the question. We're going to get to that next. After we discuss William for a few seconds, and another donation there. So if I ever do see Hax in person, I'll make sure that we split that for some drinks or something. I don't know if you go to cons. You go to cons, Hax?
I haven't gone to any of the cons, but then Justin told me how fun that they were, and the behind the scenes of it all, and I want to do that more than anything else. So I hope everything clears up before
yeah, that's kind of in question, but I will reserve that to share with Hax in some sort of way. We have Helen McClue's fangirl. We have Jess, Chrissy of Oldstone. We have so many awesome people here. Let me just scroll up here. Forrest Blurda, Nicola, Peter Griffin, and anyone else that joins us. So yeah, I guess we can kind of riff a little bit on Caleb and then get to Maura's question, which is really interesting. She wants to talk a little bit about is Serac human or is he a host? Kind of like Avatar for Rebus. Actually, let's get into that right now.
Yeah, I was going to say,
because Maeve was a very big part of the last episode, and we know that at some point, at least her and Dolores are going to have some sort of showdown. So what is your thought on that? Because it kind of popped into my head after I was watching your video that Serac could possibly be an avatar there.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be really interesting. But then we see, of course, the site with all I don't want to call them pearls because they look a little bit different, but we see so many of the different AI people like Maeve in there, and there's like hundreds there. So pretty crazy, right? Where do we go? Let's talk about this right now.
Yeah, well, so that cradle-esque thing, those are definitely pearls, but they're in the chestnut, right? So like the whole chestnut, what had to been built, and then the pearl placed inside. When I saw that, like when I saw the reveal of him in the real world, I definitely thought it was the real world. It was only until someone mentioned this this connection between them in the post in like the behind the scenes of the episode, them talking about how they had to show 100% a full stop in a simulation. And of course, like when you do a freeze all motor functions, hair moves, stuff like that, because it's still affected by the physics of the world. But when you're in a simulation and you do a full stop, everything stops. Particle effects are frozen in motion. So then when you go back and watch the scene with Maeve and Serac and he stops her, none of her hair moves. Nothing moves. So it was like, then it hit me. I was like, wait, I could have read the scene all wrong, because I really like the idea that he is like a manifestation of Serac. Like the natural progression for an AI that writes humanity is to then create his own character to better facilitate his power in the world. I love that idea, but equally, I don't think it has to be that
complicated.
Yeah. I think it's very, very possible that it is the real world. But ever since someone pointed out that when he presses that button, nothing moves, I can't stop seeing that. And I'm like, damn it, I think it might be a simulation. Yeah.
Well, one thing that's really interesting is there's actually a lot of biblical references that happen in Westworld and connections. And Rehoboam and Serac are actually tied to a lot of stuff that happened in the Middle East after King Solomon. And Rehoboam was actually a king. And there was this uprising and these wars going on in Israel and all that. So there's something going on there. And we know that Dolores kind of wants to wage war in the system. So I don't know. I might have to dive into that into another video, because I've spoken briefly actually with Robert about some of the mythology in the opening sequence about Icarus and the story of Icarus and Greek mythology and in relation to the maze, which is all ties back to Theseus and the Minotaur and kind of what's going on in the first two seasons. But there's something so interesting that's going on here with Serac and Rehoboam. And I'm certain that there's going to be a bigger reveal. But I kind of did want to get to this question because the showrunners, Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, by the way, who are married in a fantastic couple, I absolutely love them. They said they wanted to take this in a more linear direction, because part of what made the first two seasons so great was, kind of that mystery box that J.J. Abrams talks about. You know what I mean? What's in the mystery box? Keeping that and keeping, your audience engaged with that. But that's been opened, right? That's been open. We've kind of seen the cradle and all of that. And now we're into the point where we got 8 episodes this season and they have to execute a story in less time, even though some of the episodes have been a little bit longer. I believe the first episode was 16 minutes over an hour. So it's really interesting, Chris, because I know you just spoke about this just recently, how they're going to execute all this story with so many different characters over 8 episodes. That's a bit more challenging, right?
Yeah. It makes me think because shows with these massive characters that we want to invest time in personally, I think Game of Thrones, like they legitimately, it was so hard to tell more of Jon Snow's story early on because there was also 20 other stories going on. But as it converges, everyone is then given an equal amount of screen time because we're watching Dany and Jon Snow at the same time. So I think that maybe that's already happening, right? Like maybe Bernard's plot and Dolores's plot is the same thing. So in the sense that like that's going on, the big reveal is that boom, they've been working together this whole time and Bernard didn't know it. Like, once again, a pawn of someone else's system. And yeah, like I really hope that not having these 2 extra episodes, I hope it works. Like, and if it doesn't, then they're going to blame Game of Thrones again. But I'm hopeful. I don't know.
Well, this leads into my next question.
Yeah.
The after credit scene reveal, season 2 finale, where William is being tested for fidelity. Now, so many interesting things happen. And my personal favorite episode of this series is season 2, episode 4, The Riddles of the Sphinx.
It's 100%. Same. Yeah. Love it. Masterpiece.
And by the way, Lisa Joy directed that one.
Yeah.
So I just want to give her some props. But there's so many important things that happen in that episode, and I think we got to talk about that because William is going to be a big part of the next episode. If you've seen what's happening in the trailer that they previewed for the next few weeks, the absence of Field, there is going to be some mind-bending stuff that really happens in this next episode that's going to be revealing. William, I don't want to say he's the main protagonist, because that would kind of be cheating some other characters, because there's so many big characters. But there's this the hero's journey. What's going on with him? He killed his real daughter in the park last season, and we saw something really interesting happen when he didn't kill the wife in that episode, specifically when he's talking to the general. He talks, and when he's having the flashback, of course, of his wife's suicide, he says, death is always true. And that was something that was so important, because that showed a change in his action. And then we see in the after credit scene where he's being tested for fidelity. So I think that William, there's some sort of key, something happening with William, and he's the key to something that's going to have a very, very overall large impact, either to where the war is decided, where AI wins or they lose. Because we're going to see that happen. Either the AI wins out and humans are seen as less than, or we're going to see something where humanity kind of overcomes and somehow survives. And I think that William is a big part of that. What are your thoughts on that, man? Because the after credit scene, there's something so interesting about that. They didn't put that there for nothing, right?
Yeah, I think like my original interpretation was, 10,000 years in the future is some arbitrary number, just showing exactly what happens, right? Like humanity loses, and it, like, I feel like they do that because it's kind of given. We know that this is a full blown story about the host revolution, and it's probably not going to end in hosts losing, right? So it's like they might as well, because it adds an aspect to the story. It adds this suspense of like trying to fill in the blanks between where we start and how we get to there. Whether that's the grand image of humanity or whether that's just the grand image of this single defeated human. It's showing us like the later on. But last episode, brings up this idea that there are hundreds of these pearls in Serac's machine that have then gone through some simulation or some whatever master crafted world that their personal team has made for them. And then you look at that same scene and you're like, well, this could be a simulation. Like, why wouldn't this be a simulation? And then you look at the trailers for what William goes through in the trailers, and you see like him rising up from the water. He somehow has a gun underwater. He then sees his dead daughter standing there covered in blood. And you're just like, okay, well, simulation gotta be.
VR torture or something.
Yeah, gotta be. Yeah. I mean, there's no, because like some of the images that we see, my original thought was that he was in prison, probably being scapegoated for what he did at the park. But now that we know that is happening to Bernard Lowe, I don't think that's the case. I think maybe more likely his mental stability is being questioned here, or he's in a simulation and just, being forced through this VR hell. Or equally, that could be his cornerstone, right? The death of his daughter could be his cornerstone story that then one day builds a conscious host human hybrid of himself. Like, I don't know, man. I love it.
That's why I think the riddles of this Sphinx episode is so interesting, because he doesn't kill Lawrence's wife this time. There's a deviation, and the things that, like him going down the elevator, is a trick, because when he's on the beach, he's airlifted out, right? And then we these are we got to remember in Westworld that scenes are not necessarily in sequence. They're so that's something that's so interesting. And one thing to speak on the not getting a happy ending, the violent delights have violent ends is Shakespearean. We got to remember that. And that's kind of what it feels like, Ramsay Bolton telling the audience that Game of Thrones is not going to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
It feels like the same thing, right? So I think that, I don't think William is a hero per se, but there's something so interesting about his character, because look at the way Ford manipulates him. He knows why he's giving him the card. He must know his wife was in rehab, like all of these different things, which then leads to his daughter going to the park, which, and we hear Ford say, well, human loops are more easily calculated than host loops. Yep. So there's this whole thing going on with William, and I can't wait to see what happens with him.
I've often gone back and forth whether like Ford purposely slid that card knowing that it would start that whole cascading domino effect of the wife killing herself, leaving the card for her then getting to the park because of that. Like, Ford was this omniscient god in that world, right? He knew everything, he controlled everything, and we learn of that. I feel like we're going to learn more of that in this season somehow, that he was still pulling the strings of something. And
well, when Dolores does this, when she's telling, like she does that,
yeah,
I was like, whoa, 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 is that Ford
Yeah.
inside Dolores? I'm like, no way.
Yeah, I love it, man. And Ford is such a great character. Anthony Hopkins is such a great actor. It was probably one of the best characters I've seen in such a long time. And just look at the scene with him and Teresa. That is one of the most powerful, well-written scenes I've ever witnessed. I love it so much. But yeah, this idea that it was all him, and then killed the wife as just a needed sacrifice, because again, he comes to that party and is like, I'm here to pay my condolences, but it's a party, so you don't really need to do that. That's not something you do.
And he's watching William at the bar. Like he looks back at William at the bar before he knows Dolores is going to shoot him. So I'm like, I don't know. There's something there. I'm like 100% convinced that he did that whole card thing on purpose, man.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it looks like the Man in Black is going to have he's going to have an impact. I mean, they can't not. Ed Harris is just so fantastic. It would be really interesting to see if we get a young Jimmy Simpson and young William. Man. I don't know if we're necessarily going to get that because we got Caleb, and there's a lot of parallels between young William and Caleb. Something could be going on there. But yeah, man, like I don't know. The absence of field, I did the trailer breakdown, and I talked about the specific poem where it talks about this man is lost in the field, and we see in the trailer that William is looking at one mirror, he's in another mirror, and he's in the middle. So that could, like, there's some sort of entrapment going on there, and he's shooting at the mirror, so he must recognize what's going on, because in the after credit scene in season 2, he goes, I'm in the damn thing, aren't I? Like, he knows he's screwed. So that's kind of a little preview of maybe what's going to happen with him.
Man, what a nightmare. Honestly, what a nightmare.
I couldn't imagine anything worse. I literally had anxiety over that.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do we want to go next? So we had that great question from Lee, of course, where she talked about Maeve. We can talk a little bit more about that, because Lee Sizemore makes a reappearance, and all of their interactions are pretty interesting. Of course, Maeve, we know, can stop freeze motor functions of other hosts and stuff like that. And Serac is supremely interested in her, knowing that they've had kind of this advanced. They've had more time to plan than they have, because Dolores has been inserting pearls inside Charlotte Hale, which we could talk about. Maybe who's inside of her next. But yeah, kind of like with Maeve, like what are their intentions with Maeve? Like just using her, like, you think that she's going to be able to use those powers in the real world? Is she going to be able to kind of somehow, because Dolores has an army now. She's able to she replicated Liam's bodyguard, Martin Connells, played by Tommy Flanagan. And that's going to be an issue, because now Dolores can kind of infiltrate all these bigger, Delos we already know is infiltrated with Charlotte Hale, but Insight now.
Yeah. I do like this idea of infiltration, replacing humans with hosts until finally just the whole boardroom in Delos is just all host replacements. I think that would be amazing to see. I also think that was the plot of Future World, the sequel to the original Westworld. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think that yeah, I'm not really sure,
because it's really interesting in the trailer. Yeah. Trailers are often cut in a misleading way to give us a red herring, and something that's really interesting is that I think what we're seeing is the scene cut out of order, because the scene where we see Charlotte Hale on the couch and Maeve is actually outside, and I think talking to Martin Connells. Is that you, Teddy? I think that's the way it's cut out. She's actually not talking to Charlotte Hale in that situation.
Okay.
Because the way the trailer is cut, if you look at Maeve, it's like dark outside, and then we see Martin Connells also, like, pointing his gun back and forth. But there's something really interesting going on there, because we also see in the trailer that Dolores is like being affectionate with Charlotte Hale. So does that mean perhaps that Peter Abernathy could be inside? That's who I think is inside Charlotte Hale.
I think I know Robert made a video recently about it, and I don't know. I could definitely see Peter Abernathy in there. I could also see Emily, for a few reasons. Emily and Charlotte had a relationship. William and Emily have a joke about her being so they had a conversation in season 2 about like Charlotte Hale begging Emily to come, and she was like, oh well. But it was such a passing line that it felt like it was like intended to show that they had a relationship. That they have like William and her have like talked badly about Charlotte Hale at some point, like as just a nuisance to William's world, and I think that like them showing this relationship of her growing up and then knowing who this person is, I think would then help her better impersonate Charlotte Hale. It also shows Charlotte Hale smoking, and we've only seen 2 other characters smoke, and that's Emily and Teresa. And so
Teresa's an interesting one too.
Teresa again would be super interesting. It would be a great way to get a great character back into the plot. But yeah, man, that I feel like I pray that this episode tells us outright, because like I hate the guessing game, and it because of course they do it so well. It's just like you simply just need to be as ambiguous as possible, and every answer could be the right answer, right? So,
well, there's always so many great twists, right? Like expect the unexpected. This is Westworld. We've seen a lot of twists and a lot of things happen where it's like, whoa, okay, well, that's certainly mind blowing. But yeah, something really interesting is going on there, because there's a certain affection there with Dolores, and I find that specifically interesting. Just the way she's speaking to that person, there's affection there, and I don't know. It would honestly be so cruel if it was Peter Abernathy or Teddy. Just from it would show that Dolores is just her loop is on revenge. That's what she's so focused on. But chances are it's probably somebody more obscure that something not so obvious.
I don't know, man. Teddy, again, like the affectionate side that we see, like them spooning in the bed, and like 100% points to Teddy. I mean, it's an exact copy of when Teddy kills himself, and then he is laying there, and she cuddles him there as well. I don't know if they do that route, then I don't think that we're going to see the answer revealed for a little bit. Because it does show that she is a ruthless person, willing to once again remodel this person that she is supposed to have affection for to do her bidding, like she did in season 2. And that was one of the big things that was like, oh, she's a villain. She's she doesn't care about human lives or host lives. She's just in it for herself. And so I think if they do that, then yeah, it definitely cements her as the villain of this season, which brings up this theory I'm writing now about Serac and his motivations, because what we've seen in these first 2 episodes, there's a good case to be made that maybe he's the good guy, and maybe we're going about this all wrong, because it just seems like such a certain villain. Big data, privacy, all of that, and impeded on for this making the world a better place. And it's such an easy villain that I'm like, maybe he's not the villain here.
It's so interesting too, because it all goes back to the opening sequence of this season for me. And I just found that bird flying into the jet engine, but more importantly, the bird flying into the sun and feathers falling. I'm a huge mythology fan, and I can't help but think that we are going to see some major hubris this season. And I can't think that bird might not be Dolores reaching to her, spreading her wings, reaching for the sun, and we can maybe see Rehoboam as the sun, as a circular object, her reaching too far and trying to go for something like that. And I think that for the reason I think this is Caleb, because we see the absence of field in the poem. What it talks about is there's 2 separate things. Right? There's the part and the whole. And what is happening with William is he's trying to become whole. That's part of the reason he was searching for this thing in the park, this thing that he thought was missing. And then he realizes when he goes outside the park to his family, he realized that he basically destroyed his family. in his wife's life, right? So I think that we could see a similar thing happen with Dolores, where her intentions and goals are completely, because I think there might be a misdirection there. And I can't help but feel that Dolores is going to feel some hubris. I don't know. There's something going on. I just like Dolores seems like this all powerful thing. Like she's reaching this this critical mass where she's basically going to become unstoppable. And I just can't see her becoming unstoppable in this season. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion, I guess.
Yeah, if she does get access to this machine that just tells humanity what to do, then man, I don't know. At that point, she's won. So I don't think it seems. I think it's like I don't know, because it doesn't tell humanity what to do, right? It shapes the future in the sense that now someone interpreting this can then make those changes, and alter the course of the future based on what this machine is interpreting. And I don't know. I think that there's plenty of room for this to be used against humanity, for Dolores to be that person that has control of the machine. But I think that control is such a impacting thing that if she has that, she wins, right? I don't see, man, it's a double-edged sword there, right? Because I don't see someone having that losing that ability. But at the same time, if she has that, it means that Serac lost that ability. So I don't know. It's such a paradoxical thing when you can predict the future and then don't know that you're going to lose, right?
We see all of these spikes happening in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that certainly could lead to these, major events happening. We don't necessarily know if that's kind of foreshadowing for some of these bigger things that we may be seeing throughout this season, but certainly we're going to learn more about this AI's potential. And it's so interesting that how fast Dolores got into Liam's life, right? And he doesn't have full access. And then, she of course is staring down there at Rehoboam again. So it seems like, and we see in the trailers for the season 2 that she's, got some sort of army. She's got guns, and it looks like she's going to be making some sort of assault, probably on Insight, and Maeve will probably, there will be some sort of clash there. So it'll be really interesting. But I just happen to feel like there's going to be some sort of reveal there where, Dolores is going to have to deal with some hubris, or there's going to be some plot twist where we find out, maybe Serac is the good guy or really the bad guy. Something major is going to happen there, and we need to find out more in the next episode for sure.
Definitely. Please let it be some massive reveal. I don't know.
So one of the really interesting things in the last episode too is them showing Lee Sizemore again. I didn't think he was necessarily a character that we were going to get to see again. There's Akatasha was another character that I would love to see, but in Kiksuya, that's probably my second favorite episode of the whole series. I wouldn't be mad if he wasn't brought back, because his story felt kind of like it was completed. But why do you think they brought him back in the last episode? That was pretty interesting.
I don't know. They did it for me. They did it because I was just begging it into existence. Yeah, I love Lee Sizemore. He is such an interesting character. I mean, he outright shows Maeve that humanity is not bad. He is then, with that single action of sacrificing his own genuine life for a host that could be rebuilt, is such a meaningful thing. And the purpose of him is amazing. If they bring him back in some kind of way, maybe at like the end of the Game of Thrones, at the end of Westworld, and have then mastered this ability to recreate humans, I would love to see him back in the show. If only to end the show with just everyone being a host. I don't know. I don't care. But it would be cool to see him at some point in this plot. And some of the stuff that kind of like, the fact that he didn't get frozen in the simulation, that he was able to, be unaffected. I've seen some people theorize that it is pointing to perhaps them having so much information because he was alive and was like put in a comatose state. And then, they were able to interpret his mind outside of the park. And I like that idea. I love the idea that Lee's still alive. but I don't know. It seems like, again, this whole season's going to be, we need a simpler plot, and that might be convoluted.
One thing that was really interesting that you just mentioned was how Lee was very impactful on what ended up happening with Maeve. And similarly, you talked about how, how he sacrificed himself, and how I can't help but feel like there's going to be, like, again, I gotta mention Caleb and Dolores. I can't help but feel like there's going to be a similar situation there, right? Dolores is in a pretty tough spot. She's going to be in this situation where she needs to, get all of these assets and get kind of all of these things in line so she can, kind of make this assault on Insight. And then we have Caleb, and she's going to find out about his situation. And this is something that could perhaps soften, her more aggressive intentions. And there's something so interesting about Caleb, because one thing that's really interesting too is if we look at what happens with Caleb in the first episode, at when he's waking up, it's basically the exact same awakening that we see with Dolores when she's in Westworld, when she continues to awaken back at the start of her loop. So there's something interesting there, and the fact that hopefully, I hope that Caleb isn't a host, but I got to say that.
Okay.
but the fact that they're showing that shows that there's a real connection between these two characters, and yeah, I can't help but feel there's going to be something massive with, like, Caleb is obviously going to have a massive impact on Dolores.
Yeah. I think, again, I've seen threads of people talking about proof that that Caleb is a host, citing the repetitious waking up, doing it in the exact same way, so on and so forth. But I fully subscribe to this idea that humans are deterministic in Westworld, and they are going to have to show that to the audience. And I think that idea is such a hard ideal to sell. There's another show right now called Devs that's actually doing that, and they did it immediately. They did this analogy of a marble, right? If you have a marble rolling down at a 45-degree angle, you could theoretically collect enough information on that to then project its path for the future. And if you have that same information, you could theoretically predict the deterministic route that it took previously. And so we haven't decided that yet in this show. But if that is the route they're taking, I think they're going to have a hard time selling that to the masses, because it's like, oh, we're humans and we're predictable, morons compared to artificial intelligence, free will hosts, right? So I don't know. I think it's all just to show really exactly that. We need that repetitious, all of us wake up in the same bed every day, exactly like Caleb. It's just them trying to make that point that we are deterministic. I don't know.
Oh God! I already have enough existential crises. Please no.
It's good, man.
Why do I watch this show?
It's good.
We're gonna get to the Game of Thrones cameo, which was fantastic. Absolutely loved that. Just want to get to a couple. We're gonna get some questions in chat too. We're getting around 45 minutes here, and I think we'll finish off probably the last part of the live stream here with some questions, because all of you are awesome. So Shade of the Evening says, Caleb's irony, I need someone real, then seeing Dolores. So that's pretty funny. And then John Taylor says, sounds like that show, Devs. Yes, Hax just basically was just revving off that. So yeah, by the way, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Of course, if you haven't checked out Hax, you have to go check out his Westworld content. I have all of his social media in the description of the video, so if you're not subscribed to his channel, make sure you go check out his YouTube channel, also his Twitter, and if you want to support him, Patreon, also in the link of the description of this video.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So thanks. And once again, thanks everyone for joining us on the Saturday. I know everyone's situation is a little bit different, but we appreciate that you're spending some time with us.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, let's take some questions from the chat, Hax.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. Also, we'll probably finish off what we're most excited for the next episode right after that. So everybody in chat can kind of get on that train too.
I do see one question.
Yeah, let's go.
Scrolling up here a little bit. Do you think it's possible that Rebus, the character in season 1 and season 2, do you remember who he was? Rebus.
He was the cowboy with the mustache and no, sorry.
Yeah, he was the one that you're a growing boy, and then the one getting milk poured on him.
It's Stephen Ott. It's Stephen Ott that plays his character, right? Like he was
Michael Oggs.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I know who that is.
From Grand Theft Auto, yeah. But the question is, do you think it's possible Rebus could be in the security guy?
Ooh. Yeah, it's really interesting because we don't know. Well, we know she had 5 pearls, correct?
Yeah.
And we know that she recreated Bernard from memory, right?
Yeah.
So then there's a possibility of like we got to kind of discuss who she got in those pearls. Like, who does she consider most loyal? Obviously, who does she think could be kind of her generals? Angela is certainly a consideration, right? Because even though she was, in the explosion in the cradle and all that, like that is someone that we have to consider. But Rebus, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily an essential character that we would see. I think there's probably a lot of other characters that would be considered before him, but certainly that could be something that is thrown in there. That's like a little bit more of something that the showrunners could consider, but I'm going to say no on that personally, just from my own personal opinion.
Yeah. If we're talking about the security guy being Martin that gets replaced, I assume that's what we're talking about. Yeah, I don't know if we have any interaction with Dolores and Rebus that is a good interaction. I feel like Rebus was very much the plot line that led to Dolores, being taken advantage of by the guests as like seducing the farmer's daughter and cucking Teddy, I guess.
That's actually who I think is in there, because we got to remember that Dolores kind of. And we hear in the trailer too. Let's speak to this, Chris. Maeve says, "Is that you in there, Teddy?" And then, of course, we see Charlotte Hale with the blood on her shirt. But like I said, the scenes don't have the same lighting. And then we see Martin Connells with his gun later. So I actually think that's who's inside Martin.
In Teddy, yeah. It just makes so much sense to be Teddy. Rebus is a good guess. I would love to see Rebus. Maybe not like his personality, because I like the character. I like, Michael Oggs, and just playing that character. But Rebus as a host mind, I really don't care about.
And we got to remember, he kind of reverted to the White Knight state at the end of his journey.
Yeah.
That's when we last saw him. And then we see
the girl.
He's like the good old hero cowboy riding on. One thing that's super interesting too is how Tommy Flanagan's character Martin, like his disposition, and we got to think that the way that Dolores wanted to recreate him was like as close as possible, like 99.9% like the same, right? And we see him as kind of this character who's cautious and a little bit aggressive, and I think just how she manipulated Teddy's data to what we saw at the end. Teddy was more aggressive, not as loving, as kind as we saw in his first loop. So I think that is kind of maybe, and Maeve, like when in her tone, when she's saying like, "Is that you, Teddy?" It's kind of almost like, what is she doing to you? Like torture. You know what I mean? That's the way I kind of read what she was saying. So I think it's Teddy inside Martin.
Yeah, and that would just be such good character development for Teddy. I mean, I would love this idea of Teddy, coming back. Both the actors is very good, but the character that they've created as this host mind, it's shown. If there was ever a path for consciousness that would show both the inhumanity of humanity and the inhumanity of being a host, it would be Teddy. Like, he is outright programmed to be not himself by another host. And then, of course, he has 30 years of being abused by guests. Like, he is the balanced arbiter that sees both sides, So Teddy's a great character. Having him shipped off in the Valley Beyond seems like a waste. I'll be honest, a lot of the characters that were shipped off of the Valley Beyond seem like a waste, because, if we're never going to see them again until...
Akatasha, no!
Yeah, I mean, again, but I do agree. His story was pretty well said and kind of shaped some things that we didn't know. So it was kind of like an accent that was needed, but, could be disposed of. But yeah, but again, still sad to see him not in the show anymore.
It's a great point that you make, because it kind of relates to what Shade of the Evening is saying in chat. Dolores would have to be super selfish to bring Teddy back. And we're talking about the big, obviously there's a big change from Dolores from season 1 to season 2. And now we're in season 3. I think we're going to kind of get a mix of both, right? Like we see maybe her waffle back and forth between these two different Doloreses that we've seen. And like I said, we like in the opening sequence, like I think there's a little bit of the Icarus story going on here. We see some of that Greek mythology happen within the park, certainly in Westworld. So
yeah,
Teddy, I think it's going to be really interesting to see the reveal throughout the season who they specifically picked to be in those pearls. That's going to be a big reveal.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. Talented. Sorry, Maura Lee's pointing out another question here. Hax, I'll pose this one to you. Talented A had another question. If they would bring back Anthony Hopkins, if so, in what capacity? You can probably speak to this better than I can, because I've watched interviews with Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, and they've said no. But I mean, Anthony Hopkins is Anthony Hopkins. So
yeah, they also told us no at the end of season 1, right? Outright told us no, and so to see him back in season 2 was very much not what happened. They are telling us once again Ford will never be back in the story, and that does very much create this room for hosts becoming their own thing without their creator really weighing in, and thus taking away from their experiences being genuine beings. And I think that Anthony Hopkins is a phenomenal actor that I would love to see back in the show. I just do not think it'll happen. I'm
in agreement there, actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, actually, the one thing we talked about a little bit earlier is the scene where they're at the Insight party, and she's talking about part of the human brain that's 1.5 inches long, and she does this. The exact same thing when Anthony Hopkins is talking to Dolores. When we have obvious, and we see this in the opening sequence too, the Michelangelo thing, right? Where we see the when he talks about the human brain and consciousness. So there's something going on there that could just be an insert by the showrunners kind of trying to say, oh, Ford is in Dolores. But we know that Ford helped build Dolores. So like that is just something that I think they want to confuse us a little bit with, but certainly could be a major twist. Ford is a monster. We got to remember that, man. He's something else. So for him to be inside Dolores, or part of him to still be there in Dolores, is certainly not out of the question, I don't think.
Yeah, so it definitely was meant to be ambiguous. She touches her temple, and exactly that scene from before. But it's like, is she learning? Is this like, traces of her memory with showing a progression of self, showing that she is, not resentful of her creator and what happened to her to get her to this point, but she is just outright using this information for her own benefit. Both I think are great to think about. But yeah, man, I don't know. If Ford comes back, I will not be mad at all.
Well, something that's really interesting too, Claudia just mentions in the chat. Could Dolores create a version of Ford from her memory? We got to remember when Dolores was reading all those books in the cradle of Carl Strand and the person that she kills in the first episode, she kills the Delos executive, Dolores executive, the Delos executive. So it's certainly interesting because she reads all of these different books, and then we have, of course, the 5 pearls. So how many books did she read in there? That is certainly something that could be connected to what you're saying, Claudia. That would be really, some people are saying they think that Ford is a pearl and inside Charlotte Hale. That's like absolutely insane. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it certainly would be a mind-blowing twist.
There's a lot of similarities between Ford and Arnold's story and Serac and Liam Dempsey's father. Both of these like duos had a single partner killed, and the story was then shaped by the person who was left alive. And I love this idea that like Serac is the Ford equivalent. And so we'll then learn like how Liam Dempsey's father was killed and, stuff like that.
And then also the
Yeah.
parallels between Bernard and Liam, like being kind of like locked out of certain things and information. That's kind of
Very
interesting
good
too.
point. Yeah, very
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Oh man, we could go on about this forever, but we got about another you got 5 to 10 minutes left in your hacks.
Yeah, sounds great. Whatever.
Awesome.
I'm down to talk.
Oh, I love Westworld. I really do hope the numbers go up because the numbers have been down a little bit.
Yeah.
So hopefully they increase, but I'm assuming even if the numbers were way down, HBO, best network television, they will definitely see the story through, I think.
They have to. Yeah, I mean, I get that a lot. I get that comment all the time about if I'm worried that no one's watching it or something like that. I'm really not. I mean, what I watch is a masterpiece, and I've watched shows previously that were masterpieces that failed, but just something does not seem like I'm not at all worried. And I think that's because HBO is such a great network. Everything they put out is a a well-polished thing regardless. And I don't think so. I don't see them pulling the plug before the story is complete, because even after it's done, like, I didn't watch Dexter when it came out. I binged Dexter as soon as like Netflix became a thing, and I will never forget that story, one of the greatest stories ever told. And equally with this, like 10 years down the line, they need to finish this story because it'll be great for people whenever. It is a story that is like this whole big data security thing and data manipulation and simulating determinism, stuff like that. Like, this story is something that is very, very much starting with our generation, or just previously, and will exist for probably all of humanity. Honestly, because we will always have data now. We will always have to worry about where our data goes, and I think this is exactly what
everything is connected to mathematics. We can just straight up say that. I'm not going to get into the whole universe bit because I don't want to give anybody anxiety attacks. But we do have another question here, Hax, from Shade of the Evening, a donation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Can y'all talk about Serac? Can't stop thinking about his connection to Delos. How did he acquire the pearls? So we didn't talk about that specifically. We talked a little bit about kind of his own cradle and what's going on there. What do you think? Like, you're more on the track of him being more of a good influence right now.
Yes, but with Westworld, I don't think that I think that he is a character that will do whatever he thinks, whatever he needs to do what he thinks is best, right? So the gray moral compass full in effect there. I think that very much he probably, when the park went to shit, that he went in, stole all the pearls from cold storage, or somewhat after, while they were still trying to get their feet on the ground, and was able to then build whatever they needed. Now we see like a pile of host bodies in cold storage that kind of point to possibly more being taken. So I think that aligns. But that's really it. I think that, and I also don't really know the difference between like the white and black chestnuts in that cradle-like structure that he had. If it's trying to say that those are humans and one's black hat or one's inherently bad or one's inherently good, is interesting, because then it means that Maeve is inherently good, but equally just could have been programmed bad. But I don't know. My best guess is that he is probably connected in the sense that he knew about the Immortality Project, and was very much relying on that for some part of his plan for his master plan for humanity.
So really, another interesting comment by Tubbs here. I see. So I love all the different conversations that are going on in chat. I love that, by the way. Really interesting comment by Tubbs. Delos made a robot game, like in a robot world, and Insight makes simulation games. Very, very interesting. And we talked a little bit about Future World. Certainly something. The showrunners have discussed specific scenes that have influenced Westworld, and obviously Michael Crichton, the great creator of this universe. Something that certainly, I mean, it would be super interesting, because there is another fifth park which hasn't been revealed yet. We got medieval, I guess medieval world, we can call it medieval world.
Mhm.
They didn't give it a specific name. We got war world, or we still don't know what that fifth park is. So that is something that is going to be interesting to see if that plays. If that's future world, and that's the big reveal at the end of the season. Okay, now what we're seeing now on season 3 is future world. That would be insane.
Yeah, I don't think they do that because I think a lot of people would be upset by it. Just like, damn it, we want to see the real world at some point, and now we're forever going to have to question whether or not we're seeing that. So like, well, maybe not, because if they reveal future world and then see the destruction of future world immediately after, would kind of then be a good jumping off point to let us know, hey, don't worry about that anymore. You're seeing the real world. But yeah, the fact that we don't know what it is still, I think points to probably being future world or whatever the equivalent it is, because it's already in the future. I don't know.
That RICO app, there's something about that, because like, let's say for example, this is future world. It would be really interesting to see the RICO app and all of these other applications of things that are going on. That was part of their constructed their construct, this RICO app and all of these other things that are happening for future world. It would just be so mind-blowing, because we know that this is like 2058 now, or a little bit in the future. So all of these things that are happening, we got to assume, exponentially technology is just going to become this thing that is just so intelligent and so interactive. So it's not out of the question that could be the case. I don't think it's going to go there either, because I think that they have to show real world consequences to how technology is affecting humanity, and why humanity may be making certain mistakes with it, which is part of, I think, what they're trying to show us. Don't screw up.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I also think like it's really interesting to think about RICO as this like controller, because someone runs this, and I don't know if it was hinted at or maybe it was talked about in like the commentary outside of the show, but someone runs RICO, and it's definitely possible that the people that run it are, the people running the world. Because why not? Why not have this app that, still makes you billions of dollars in revenue? Like, he robs an ATM, his cut was $1,200. I have to imagine the other people's cut was $1,200. How is RICO paying for this? And, just like, I don't know. I think it's interesting to think that this is part of the simulation, in the sense that like you need these people to be doing this crime for some reason, one way or another, to kind of shape humanity and alter things. And actually, 100. I commit to that right now. 100%, it has to be either Serac or Rehoboam, because what that is the best way to shape humanity. When you don't want, like, if you need to do something bad that's going to put you on the right course, just outsource it. Just literally outsource it, and then make it seem like it's other people giving, these requests for.
And it would be so
jobs.
intelligent too, man, because they want to keep that inequality gap. You know what I mean? The 1% and what's going on. They don't want people to become aware of how they can abuse the system to get in that 1%. They want to keep the people who are there, who have all of this knowledge, there up at the top, and people like this oppression we've seen. And that's part of what Dolores wants to bring down, and why I think Caleb is so important, and why he's the one using the RICO app. And it's clear that he's going to be part of how Dolores's worldview is shaped, because she will see that he's not part of that whole, that bigger 1%. Yeah. So really great chat today. So many great questions. Let's finish it off with what you're actually most excited for in the next episode. What like based on the trailer, we know that the Man in Black William is going to be in there. There's going to be some interesting stuff with Charlotte Hale, perhaps. What do you think is going to happen in the next episode?
I would like to see the reveal of who is in Charlotte Hale. That is what I would like to see most. Doubt it'll happen, because that'll be too easy. But I would love to see the reveal of that. I would love to see some of the in between. If we're seeing her being created, I would love to see how we get the information from Dolores, who explicitly was the one who read the book, and how that translates to another host being able to play this role of Charlotte Hale. Because immediately, like, because Dolores knows that information, I feel like it makes the most sense to just have Dolores do it and have Dolores stay in the body. But if we're seeing another Dolores, then yeah, I mean, I don't think we're using the gimmick of two Doloreses right now. I think at some point multiple personalities of the same personality will be, or I'm sorry, multiple
Wyatt.
multiple copies of the same personality will exist. Oh my God, Wyatt and her would actually be pretty nutty. Now that you say
Wyatt
that.
and Martin Connells would be kind of crazy.
That is a really good point. Yeah. Wow, that is a great point.
Now we're blowing our own minds right at the end of the friggin' live.
It's gotta be Wyatt's got to be one of the personalities. Almost has to be, unless I don't know Wyatt, because no, it can't be.
Well, Wyatt's more aggressive, right? Wyatt's just more aggressive minded, like singularly focused personality.
Yeah, but it seems like Wyatt, because in season 2, Dolores has a comment about, the farmer's daughter in me says you forgive you, the Wyatt in me says kill you, and then through that, like my own voice is coming out, and so I think it's like they are both Dolores now. It's like we've gotten past the point where they're separate things, and like she's built her own function. So I think if they do separate Wyatt, then we'll see a different Dolores because of that. But ultimately, we might be overthinking it, because they could definitely make Wyatt, and no one would really question it without doing that exact exercise of thought. But yeah, I don't know. Wyatt would be great. I would honestly love to see Wyatt, just because it would build like a character that we've heard of this entire time, that like is finally getting its own avatar.
I think they definitely got to reveal a couple of the pearls, like not necessarily all of them, in the next episode, and then maybe leave. There'll probably be a twist with one or two of them at the end of the season where we're like, oh my God,
yeah,
that is who that is. That's probably going to happen because as the season 2 finale, we saw the copy of Charlotte Hill kill Charlotte, so we got we always get those kind of reveals more later on in the season where those big kind of intense clashes happen. So I'm on you with the Pearl thing with Charlie Hale. And I think one thing that you mentioned too, kind of filling in some of those gaps, the timelines are less confusing this season. So I think that'll fill the gap nicely in kind of what Dolores's plan was. And will give us a little bit, by looking at what her plan was a little bit more in the past, kind of get a little bit more foreshadowing for some of her maybe future actions. I'm a sellout. William and the Man in Black is my favorite character on the show, so I just want to see what the hell's going on with him. So. Yeah,
I like William too, man. I think he is a great character. I think the discussion about if he was always this person, this darkness that he had inside of him, if that's legitimate, if that's an integral picture of who he is, or if that's a manifestation of what people tell him about who he is. This machine is telling him he's got these medical conditions, that he's, I forget exactly what it lists, but that he's not this titan of industry, when in reality he is a titan of industry. He is like this masterful human that has built his way up from what I think is basically nothing, because we know that Ford basically came from nothing, and he has a line to William about how we have pretty similar upbringings. And yeah, I mean, I love this idea of the underdog becoming not the underdog anymore, and him having this like internal conflict of who do I believe?
The conflict with the human heart, man.
Yeah. I mean, who do I believe? Do I believe that the masses that are telling me I'm a bad guy, or do I believe my own heart, which tells me that I acted in my best interests and the interests of my family always, and I'm a genuinely good person?
That's why that's why I think he's so interesting too, because the conversation in the Riddles of the Sphinx with James Delos, got to go back. I've watched that conversation at least 20 times now. And then he says, no, I don't think I'm going to. And then he just, you know what I mean? He's like, no, I don't think I'm going to continue with this. But then we see him in the same situation later. And we see him reflect on his, like, I don't want to say more. Actually, I think more than any other character, William is someone that reflects on the actions of his decisions. Not so much on what happened with his daughter. I think we're going to see a lot of that this season, but we start to see some of the reasonings why he's going to the park, and some of the reasons why he's feeling so much regret, right? And just, I can't help but feel like he's been through so much tragedy, and he is a tragic character. There's got to be some sort of sliver for him of something that's positive, right? Like, because if you look at the hero's journey, all the suffering that he's going through, man, I don't know. I just have a feeling that after credit scene means so much, right? And I just have a feeling that William's going to play such a big part in whether humanity wins or loses.
Yeah, I think that Dolores and William's interests could very much align in the season. It all depends on when they introduce William to this plot, because again, only 8 episodes. Because if that is the case, I'd like to see more. Or I think the audience would like to see more of how you get to their interests being aligned. Because they were very much not at the end of the season 2. So
someone actually mentioned in the chat that William could be a prisoner of Serac, which I found crazy. And then them analyzing his mind, because we also got to remember William was the one who mentioned how they tracked everyone's through the hats and all of that to his daughter. And then we see her performing the fidelity test after. So that is something that's really interesting.
Yeah. If Serac is this, if he's not a good person, using people, going through the simulation countless times, strictly to get information from them, totally 100% see it happening. Because why not? It seems like the most efficient way to get what you need from people that would hold that information from you, by like just creating this ultimate hellscape that you could manifest nightmares in order to make them talk. It seems like the worst kind of torture humanly possible. Can't close your eyes to get away from it. Can't do anything.
And Tubb says in chat, his daughter worked for Insight. She was stealing the information. So there's always this battle for information and who has it. Yeah, and because I find so interesting why she went to the park. Oh man, I think we have to do a whole discussion on William. God damn it, I love it.
So good.
Oh man, everybody in the chat, really, really want to thank all of you for joining us today. Super, super fun discussion. Like I said, if you haven't checked out Hax's channel, excellent Westworld videos. I can't state that enough. Of course, all of his social media, YouTube channel, all that's in the description of the video if you want to go check that out. And we'll have to do this again. Actually, tomorrow we're doing this again on Robert's channel, Indie Geek. So what time is that again, Hax? 5:30 or 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time?
5:30 sounds right.
Yeah. And I believe it's an episode 3 preview. So that's going to be super fun. Robert, always fantastic host. You guys know Indie Geek, killing it as always. So thanks for joining us today, everyone who's going to be watching this later, or if you watch us now, please like the video if you enjoyed this, and subscribe to the channel for more upcoming Westworld content. Of course, I think I speak for both of us. Everybody stay safe, stay inside as well.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Watch more Westworld. And watch our content, please. But thanks everyone for joining us. Really, really fun discussion, and we'll see you all tomorrow on Indie Geeks Westworld episode 3 discussion for season 3. Thanks again.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.